What's going on, everyone? My name is Joseph Reynolds, and today joining me is the #1 ranked UK and Ireland light heavyweight, the #2 ranked in Europe, and obviously a Team England competitor who's going to the IMMAFs in Mitchell. Goode, ahead of the IMMAFs in Serbia in February. How are you feeling for it, buddy?
Yeah, all good. Work's already started, so been working over Christmas, getting ready for it, and it's going to be the best version of me, I think.
And now we'll reflect back on terms of 2022. Obviously, you're able to get 4 fights. You represented England at the Four Nations and at the Europeans. And prior to that, it seemed to have gotten to a point where the UK scene, before getting the European fighters, there weren't many tests for you. You were coming in and you were doing really well against them. But this year, you faced different opponents. What's that been like, getting these different sort of opponents in a tournament setting?
Oh, it's been really good. I think the tournament setting's really interesting because obviously when you've got one person in mind that you're going to be fighting, it's really easy to pick apart their game. I find it really easy to take somebody's game and dissect where I'm going to win and where I'm going to struggle. And moving into tournament format, when you can't have that, you don't know who you're fighting, you don't know at what point you're going to fight them at, it's hard to navigate your way through. So it's meant that you have to better yourself completely. There's no cheating your way through it, basically. I think it's quite easy to, even if you get a really tough opponent, it's quite easy to see where their weaknesses are. And you can do that for single opponents. When you've got a pool of like 15 fighters in a tournament, it's quite difficult to do that. So yeah, I found it quite interesting. And also the guys who I fought with, I haven't done so well against, have been like the Eastern European guys, and I feel like they're not that good. I do feel like they're not that good. I think they're very beatable.
Yeah, and then you start, obviously, you take a look at the momentum going into this year. Obviously, you got the bronze medal at the Europeans, and I'm sure it's like you're hungry to get the gold. But in terms of, it's sort of the closest experience you can get to the World Championships without going to the World Championships. And to have that experience and to know roughly what it's going to be like on the day, what's that like, sort of going into it and knowing how close the team is as well in terms of the bond that there is with Team England?
I think the bond's got way better since the Euros. I've seen Jordan's little like a little clip of Jordan Little who you spoke to, and he was right in that going into the Euros, there wasn't a lot of cohesion. It's quite a new team. There's a new leadership sort of structure within the organization, and bringing the best fighters together was one thing, but having that team unity wasn't really, it didn't feel like it was there. And then once we were there and we were helping each other, like with weight cuts and training and cornering and all the other things associated with it, and advice and learning from each other and stuff like that, I think we've got a really strong team bond moving into the Worlds now. And also for those of us that went to the Worlds, and especially those of us who medaled at the Worlds, it's quite motivating to go into the Worlds thinking that it's easy, like it is easily doable to win against these guys who, like, from Ukraine or Russia or any of these countries where they're perceived to be these sort of unbeatable monsters. And having fought them, they're not that, they're not all that. And seeing our teammates who did well against them as well, like, it's going to be brilliant. A lot of momentum moving forward.
Yeah, and then obviously your goal for the World Championships will be nothing less than to get the gold. But
oh yeah,
you've mentioned the different countries and the different style of matchups. In terms of getting these different styles, each country, I'm sure, brings something a little bit different. In terms of knowing that you can face them and you can fight against them comfortably, what's that been like to know those things already at an amateur level, as opposed to having to find those out early on into your pro career or middle of it?
For those who don't understand, like the World Championships and the European Championships at IMMAF are the highest level of, obviously, of amateur, but they are easily better fighters in these tournaments than you'd find at like regional shows on a pro level. They're not. People see the shin guards as a huge thing that a lot of fighters bring up who haven't done IMMAF. When I tell you they're basically football socks, right? They really are. You'll go in there and you're essentially having like fights against guys who could easily go on to win a lot of regional pro titles and a lot of things moving forward. These Ukrainians and these Russians especially have been fighting since they were like 6 years old, and they're fighting in combat sambo. There's kickboxers from Europe they've got decorated amateur kickboxing careers, and there's guys like myself who've competed like hundreds of jiu-jitsu matches. It's not just a guy showing up to fight MMA who's trained for a couple of years. It's people with quite a significant background. So, I mean, going in to Euros and having the experience against those guys, to then go on to the world, I think is super important. But that to go from these tournaments into pro, I think it's a massive it's quite a big, it's like a step down almost from the world amateur level to regional level pro. I don't think it's as high of caliber of fighter that you're going to be finding.
Yeah, and in terms of, obviously, you mentioned there in terms of the Russians and all those sort of things, and then, but as well, you look at this country now and the progression of the sport in this country, especially. Obviously, you've been a part of it for a while. What has it been like to be a part of it, and then seeing the progression in such a short period of time as well for the country?
Well, I think it's brilliant because you got now, you think of, when you think of a country, you think of who's their best guy, right? And obviously you think of Russia, you've got a few good guys. You think of Brazil, you think of America, but now we've got Leon, who's the champ now. We've got a handful of really high level UK based fighters coming out of Ireland and Scotland, England, everywhere. But the progression in terms of the progression over the last couple of years has been due to almost a bit of hype. There's been a bit more hype around having UK fighters doing well. And when you see, I think we had the biggest medal haul of any UK team ever at the Euros that just passed. I think we had, I can't remember how many medals off the top of my head, but we had bronzes and gold medals. We had a couple of silvers as well. I think when you can see those results and when you see it in person as well, and then everyone's posting on their socials, like, we can do this sort of thing, you know, we can beat these guys who you feel like they're untouchable. And then it turns out that we're at that level too. I think we placed, I can't remember where we placed now in the whole overall medals table, but if I worked out that if I'd have won gold from the Ukrainian who scraped us, it was I disagree with the decision personally, right? But the guy who won gold in my bracket, if I'd have won gold against gold in my category and had beaten him, we'd have topped the leaderboard. We'd have been ahead of Ukraine. But it's like that narrow now. You can feel it. It's really narrow, the difference between the two. And I think experience in these tournaments is going to take us up more and more levels each time. The team's only going to get better.
Yeah, and you spoke about the prestige, obviously, that comes with competing at the World Championships and the Europeans, and even the step down that you take at pro. But looking at the alumni, the fighters that have been obviously at these competitions, you've got Christian Leroy Duncan, who fought before, then there's Makayev, there's Liam McCall, there's loads of fighters that have gone on to do great things and been World Championship winners. To be in the same bracket as those people, if you do win gold, or when you do get the gold, what will that feel like to sort of be in the same sort of list as those people who've gone on and won the World Championships?
Well, you see anyone who's won the Worlds, especially from UK, or you see anybody who's medalled at the Worlds from the UK. So I think Duncan, he got bronze. I think he got bronze at the Worlds, and he's done it a few times. He might have got silver. I'll have to double check. But I fought him. I know the level that he is at. You know that if you medal, you're going to do well in the sport. This is a really good, aside from it being a tough competition and quite prestigious in what it means, especially if you're within the MMA community. I think it gives you self-confidence knowing, like, these guys, all the people who've medaled at Worlds have gone on to do great things. Cage Warriors champs, UFC champs, Bellator fighters. There's a lot of people who come from these tournaments who, if you do well in these tournaments, you are going to do well at pro, as long as you keep your head on, basically, and keep progressing. Christian Duncan was one of the people who actually suggested, I was talking to him since my fight with him, like, this is over the course of a couple of years, couple of DMs and that, and he said to me, you should do the IMMAFs. I think in a lot of his interviews, he bigs it up as being one of the most important things that an amateur fighter can do. I think exposure to these other countries, I've realized it now from going to the Euros, when you see these people fighting and you fight them yourself, you take something from them, and you can build your skill set with those experiences. Super important to do them. I think if you're an amateur, you should be aspiring to do it.
Yeah, and you also mentioned, obviously, with the medal placement, if you'd have won gold, England obviously at the top of the list, but it seems as though not only are you sort of fighting for yourself, but you're fighting for your team, and then you're representing the country as well. What is it like to sort of be representing the country in such positive light on such a big stage as well at the same time?
Oh, it's crazy. It's basically the Olympics, isn't it? We don't have MMA in the Olympics, and this is the closest thing to that tournament although it's every year rather than it being spread out by a number of years, I think it worked. Like these World Championships are the Olympics of our sport. It's the highest level of amateur competition that we have. Regional shows, there's a lot of picking and choosing who you're going to fight, and there's, not from myself, but I know a lot of people, if you check their records, they're not beating anyone of significance. They can pick and choose with their managers who's the good matchups, whereas you go to IMMAF and you are facing the best person from every country that enters that tournament, and to represent your country and be able to stand on the podium or stand with that flag on your back, it actually means something. It's not walking out with an England flag 2 hours up the road, fighting somebody else from 2 hours down the road. Is you're fighting somebody who is proud of where they're from and want to represent their country, and you've got to do the same. So having a team go with you, we had a big cheer. We had a very loud crowd when we were over there for such a small team in comparison to Ukraine, who had what felt like 1,000 people. We were louder than them, but it's good. Good atmosphere is amazing. Positivity coming to represent your country. It's amazing.
Yeah, and as well, off the back of that, the support that you get as well, obviously it's still a self-funded event since the sport isn't recognised. And so I've seen the people that come out to support you, obviously, to help fund the journey, sponsors and things like that. What is that like as a fighter who's having to fund these things as well as train and compete? What's it like seeing the support that comes in and leading up to these sort of events as well?
Joe, it's quite difficult. I don't think people realise when you're going in for this, is a lot of these other countries have like government backing. They're state sponsored athletes. They've been in training. They're getting paid a wage to almost just train full time, and they got full kits, and they're coming on a coach. They're coming on a tour bus almost with a full team of coaches and team of people. So for us to be able to have the support from people through, GoFundMe's and donations and sponsors and things where it is coming from so many different sources, it shows you what it means to people, and it shows you what it means to see somebody from your country do well. Because it's not the government giving like, oh, here's some money for the MMA team, and here's some for the the football, whatever it is for the Olympic sports. You've got the people who are donating and the people who are supporting us really love the sport, and they really want to support us. So it's amazing. It's quite moving actually, because you feel like you're just in a dingy little gym and we're all in our little corners of the world somewhere punching each other, and then you end up realizing there's actually people want to support this. It's really good.
Yeah, and then the final thing for myself is obviously a lot of the UK fans, they already know who you are in terms of the success you've had so far, but in terms of looking at it in terms of what Mitchell Goode is going to be in his MMA career, if there was one message you could give to everyone for what they can expect at the World Championships and then beyond, what does that sort of look like a little bit?
Dangerous. I think I'm going to go through a lot of people at amateur. I think there's nobody who I've fought aside from Duncan, to be honest, who's you look at and go, that's a dangerous fighter. And there's fights that I've had at the Euros and in amateur level. I think I want to be able to take that through to pro, and I just want to. I'm in this to see how far I can go with it, basically. So if I can do well at this tournament, which I think I will do well, then going to pro, we're just going to keep the ball rolling. It's all about momentum and take people out fast, take them out early, and keep climbing the ladder, basically.
100%. Well, that is everything from myself. If you'd just like to take a moment to chat any sponsors, anything like that, obviously just feel free to go ahead, buddy. Shout
out to Grapple Machine, who's always been there with me, doing my strength and conditioning. They're working with a lot of high-level athletes at the moment. If you're serious about getting in shape and ready to go for this sport and for any martial art, really get in contact with them, Grapple Machine. Tatami Fightwear as well. They've stuck by me for the last year or so, and they've got me taken a big weight off my shoulders with regards to kit and things like that. So Tatami is probably the best brand in the game if you're into jiu-jitsu or mixed martial arts. Other than that, training partners, Impact Gym, Drag over in Swansea as well. So, and shout out to Too Good Boxing, who's my brother who does all my boxing training for me. Very good boxer.
Well, that is everything from myself. Obviously, the World Championships. If you do want to support any of the fighters, and I'm sure they've all got GoFundMe. Is there anything like that? If you do, hit them up on the social medias, which I'll leave in the description of these. Obviously, I appreciate your time very much. Gold medal coming back home after February. Appreciate your time, buddy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.